technical issue here on technical issue here. I apologize for that, and I appreciate your
No
patience.
problem.
I appreciate your patience. I've been definitely wanting to speak to you for a while. Kelsey Nicole Nelson is a one of the rising stars of the DMV in terms of sports reporting, media personality. She joins the program tonight. We'll discuss a variety of things in terms of her career and in terms of sports media as well. Again, this is your host Cyril Gerald-Quinn of the Real Deal Podcast. We are now on my YouTube audience, so you can check us out on my YouTube channel, Real Deal Podcast. We are all set. We're on YouTube, Blog Talk Radio. Of course, as always, you'll be able to check us out on iTunes, Spotify, and a number of a variety of platforms. Kelsey, how are you doing this evening?
I am great. I'm very glad to be on. It's always fun to talk sports, and I'm a big supporter of yours. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this first time on your show.
Thank you for joining me. Last now, before you even talk about getting to your career in the sports world, from what I understand, you were part of Super Tuesday in terms of Virginia. How was that coverage? How was that as in comparisons to some of the other sporting events you've covered, as far as that goes? How'd that go last night?
Yeah, so I'll tell you. I mean, a lot of times people really think there's a huge difference in terms of the coverage for politics and sports, but they're both crazy busy and super busy, and there's a lot that goes with them, and you just have to know your stuff. And I think, especially with this campaign season, I think more people than ever are paying attention to politics, which is a good thing. But with so many Democratic candidates, was really trying to grasp what viewers wanted to hear, what issues were important to them. And I think with all of the big news that we saw come out, such as Bloomberg dropping out the race, and now really most are just saying it's either going to be Biden or Bernie Sanders. And Biden has been taking some strong leads. So the campaign coverage has been fun. I was in South Carolina doing similar last week on Friday for their primary coverage. So all I can say is all is going really well, but it's intense. And I think whoever wins this Democratic seat is really going to have a time going against our current President Donald J. Trump. So it's intense. It's a lot. But it's good. I get to really talk to Americans in essence and really see what they're looking for in leadership when it comes to our next leader. But Virginia is always one of those great battleground states. A lot of people look to Virginia to see what the rest of the country will do. So I think we learned a lot from it.
What was the atmosphere like there? Was there a lot of buzz? I was looking at some of the coverage. I saw some lines in Texas where you had people out there waiting out there 3 to 4 hours even before the polls open, or not polls open, but before they can even vote. How was it that type of atmosphere in Virginia?
Yes, I think it depends on where you were in Virginia, but there were a lot of people who came early to vote. And it just shows everybody really wants their vote to be heard and wanting to feel like they have a voice in this election. So I think it was crazy. We didn't see any, I think, of the craziness sometimes you see on TV when it comes to voting. I think we'll see more of that as we continue in this election trail. But I always say a lot of these things, it's just like it's a media circus. Everyone and anyone there, because everyone's trying to break the news first of who's leading the polls, how votes are going. They want to get voters' perceptions and things like that. So it's literally, I just came back from Super Bowl in Miami, and the campaign trail has been no less intense than that. And I'm talking about just in terms of sheer media numbers. There's so many outlets now that are paying attention to this. And even though I've mostly done sports, there's also sports implications, based on whoever wins this election. So, and then we see more athletes getting involved in politics. So you'd be surprised sometimes some of the people you see covering this campaign trail. But it's been intense, and I think it's going to continue to get intense, until we find out who that person is just going to be that represents the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely a year-long process as head into this part of the season before the primaries and all that good stuff. Now, you are born and bred in the DMV area. You went to the University of Maryland. What drove you into broadcast?
Yeah.
What drove you into broadcasting? I know you now. Listen, I could feel the excitement. I know your Maryland Terrapins. They're back. They're back in the mix for the first time in a long time as far as being contenders. I felt
Yes.
that. I, I felt that
We want to
excitement.
go dancing.
Yes, yeah, you should. You should. Maryland, listen, Maryland. Listen, I'm a North Carolina fan, so it's been a rough year for my Tar Heels. So I've had to eat that, but I definitely respect what Maryland is doing right now, and I definitely remember those battles that Maryland had in the ACC with Carolina and Duke. And to be honest with you, I don't think Maryland should have ever. Now again, business is business. We know money and we know how powerful the dollar bill is, so I understood why that move was made. But it's the ACC is not the same to me without Maryland. I mean that Maryland, Duke, North Carolina, NC State. Maryland just brought a different type of feel to the ACC, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on the? I mean, what drove you into broadcasting before we get into your Maryland Terrapins?
Sure. So yeah, I'm born and bred in the area, as we like to say here. But I love it, and if you've been to the DMV, you know how big sports are. But my ties kind of go way back because my parents are actually from deep down south. My dad, I always share this story, but I'm a daddy's girl, and my dad is a girl dad. And he went to Grambling State University, and so from the time I was born, I knew sports. I knew about Grambling football. I knew about the Doug Williams of the world, the Eddie Robinsons, and I played sports, and I absolutely loved it. So there was never a time in my life where I wasn't around the game, and I played many different sports growing up, and I've always just loved that competitive edge, what sports does to bring us all together. So I knew whatever I did in life, it was going to have to be related to sports, and luckily I was able to continue my education at University of Maryland for undergrad. They had a great sports program that I got to cover, and I was actually there when Maryland switched over to the Big Ten. So being a student in that and getting to experience that, was something in itself. But going to Maryland, growing up, going to games at Cole Fieldhouse and then the Xfinity Center, and then going to Ravens games here, going to Redskins games. And I mean, in the DMV, we have every professional type of sports team. So I grew up just going to so many different things, and getting to then intern in that when I got to a certain age. But I loved it. You had to pull me away from games to get away. And like I said, my dad's a sports encyclopedia. And then just going back with my family and friends who played sports, I always knew I wanted to be around the game. So that's kind of what led me to it. Got to do an undergrad, went to Georgetown, continued and got my graduate degree in sports industry management. So it's just something I've always loved. I always remember watching so many sports reporters come before me. And I love how they were able to storytell and connect the audience and really make us feel like a part of the story or make us feel like we were at the game. So it's kind of second knowledge to me. It's like I don't know when I've ever been away from it. And then you touched a sore spot, or a happy spot, I should say, when you talked about my Maryland Terrapins. I'm born and bred in Maryland, and to go to the University of Maryland and to finally be able to comfortably put my Maryland Terrapins in the bracket much further, hopefully, than the Sweet 16. I haven't gone pretty far this year, and that's the first time I've been able to do that in a while. So I usually always do a bracket that has Maryland winning. It's because I went there, but of course that's not the bracket that I ever usually count on to get me any money should I win that big prize. But Maryland men's and women's basketball teams. I mean, Maryland women's basketball, right, for a long time. Everyone knows what Brenda Freeze has done with the program and how Maryland basketball continues to breed WNBA players, international players, and overall they've just been a really strong program. And what Mark Turgeon has done with the men's program, I mean, he's really built it to a level where now Maryland basketball is a national conversation. And you have to remember, he's doing this after the Gary Williams era. Which was not the easiest to do because that's what most of us remember. And you talked about those ACC days. But finally, Maryland is a team that some are saying has a chance to possibly bring the title home. And it's been a very long time since anyone has been able to say that about the University of Maryland men's basketball program. So it's a fun time to be a Terp, a fun time to be in the DMV. And, Maryland's trying to do something that they haven't done since the early 2000s.
You know what? I haven't. And I talked about this on a previous podcast. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a combination of a number of things as far as the college basketball. I just haven't been into it. I have not this year. I have not been into the college basketball. And
Yeah.
you're talking about somebody who, again, grew up a North Carolina fan, and I love college basketball. I love it. But this year, I don't know. I don't see a compelling star. I don't see a compelling team. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if Maryland won it all. I don't. There's not a dominant team out there. There's not a in the
Speak
least.
it into existence.
Yeah, there's not a dominant team. I would not be surprised if a Maryland, a Dayton, a team like that. Yeah, who knows? I mean, obviously you got the Baylors of the world, Kansas. Those teams are very good. But this will be a year where a team can come out of nowhere and win a championship. Maybe even a mid-major. Who knows? I don't. And I still watch the college basketball, but I just haven't been into it this year. For whatever reason.
Yeah.
Again, this draft.
I think you're making like such valid and good points. And I honestly, for me, that's what makes this year fun. Because like you said, we haven't really had that dominant program. So of course, last year, Virginia took the title, and Virginia had been really good all season pretty much. And I don't think it was as much of a surprise, but our usual contenders, you talked about University of North Carolina, and we've seen their struggles. You look at the Dukes, and you're no longer shaking when you see that Duke basketball team, the Kansases of the world. That's the thing, and that's what I think makes it fun. And I think we're seeing the same thing in the NBA this year, where it is really wide open. And of course, I mean, Lakers are the Lakers, right? They've got LeBron, and it's hard to do anything against that. But I feel like now, finally, in basketball, it's more open, right? Absolutely. You're going to go buy that Terps jersey because you believe that they might get there. Because like you said, I mean, everything that we've known in college basketball this year, this season, everything has changed and shifted. And I think it's fun to be a fan now because, as you said, I mean, this is March, and we've seen crazy Marches, but I think because of the current standings, you just truly don't know what's going to happen. And for me, that means my eyes are going to be glued to every single thing because I do think it's going to be that upset team that surprises us all and possibly hoists that trophy and becomes national champions.
Yeah, it should be a wild tournament. Now, looking at your career right now, I feel like you are in a great place as far as how like the time that you've come along. You look at women in media, the Taylor Rookses of the world, the Carrie Champions, Rosalind Gold Onwande. I apologize if I messed up her name. Um, even some of the OGs like Jamel Hill, who's still around, Robin Roberts, who's a whole legend. You have to be excited about so many women that are prominent in the sports world. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, you said so many that I look up to, and I'd add like Maria Taylor to that list, Pam Oliver's, Lisa Salters, and it's just so many women really now making a name for themselves. And I think we're seeing more women, especially minority women, in sports today than we've ever seen before. And we see them at the highest levels, and we see them controlling their own destinies. You talked about Jamel Hill, and we saw what transpired, but she's created a lane for herself and has really become someone that's become a household name. And you talked about Carrie Champion. I think the same thing when she made the announcement that she was leaving ESPN. It was a shock and major. But again, it shows people who are making a lane for themselves. You have the Joy Taylors. Just so many. And I think Taylor Rooks has really taken off for such a young age and such a commanding presence. We see her everywhere, and it just shows. I think it's the year of Black Girl Magic at its best because, as you said, I mean, they're there and doing it. But I will still say there is still, unfortunately, not enough resources or places for Black female journalists. I think that they're trying to continue to break down barriers because though we've seen success, the playing field is still not leveled. It's still not equal across representation. And I think we're still all fighting to have a seat at the table. And, what they've done, again, is tremendous. And I appreciate all of them because I can say all of them have not only made it, but have made sure to pick up other women along the way, which is huge. And I think that's how we all succeed. So I think it's one of the most exciting times to be in sports because we've never seen this before. But again, I do want to reiterate there's still not, unfortunately, not enough female journalists in sports, because there's still situations we're in where sometimes we are still the only one in the room. And it should not be that way, because I think sports journalism should be a reflection of how diverse this country is. I think until we get to that point, we still have a lot of work to do. So they have been the trailblazers. They continue to pave the way. And I think the rest of us are following along. But again, making sure that there's space for others to come up behind us, and just be great and just be the next breed of great sports journalists.
You bring up something, and I'm glad you brought that up because I mentioned all these names, and that's still only a handful of names. There upon not when you compare it to thousands upon thousands of positions. So let's, like, to your point, let's keep that in perspective. I think people will hear all the names that I just mentioned and think that there is all of a sudden now an abundance of women in sports in terms of media coverage, which, to your point, is not the case. Why is that in 2020, when we live in such a diverse time and such a progressive time? Why do you think that's the case?
So that's a great question. And I think because we see more representation kind of towards uh, the entry point of sports journalism, those entry level jobs. But at the top, where those decision makers are, we don't see representation there, and we don't see as much diversity. And if you don't have diversity at the top level, it's kind of harder for non-diversity to try to hire diversity, because they haven't been experienced or exposed to that. And so I think that's why we continue to fight to make sure that we have diverse decision makers making a chance and decision. We continue to make sure that all journalists have a seat to be interviewed and to be considered for positions. And if we think about it in this industry, it's a lot of who you know. That's a fact. And if you haven't been exposed to certain resources or certain people, which is easier for some than others, it's hard for people to know about you. And it's still unfortunately the old boys club up top. And they're still set in some of their ways. And again, we started to put a crack in the glass ceiling, but it's not been broken. And we started to have a seat at the table. But we need to make sure there's multiple seats at that table, and that we're not only at that table, but that we're seen and heard, and our voices and values, our opinion, our voices and values are really taken for granted, unfortunately. But we want to make sure that they're valued. And I think what's exciting, though, I'll tell you about this time, is that we see through the power of social media, more media outlets and more news getting called out for not having diversity, because we have the power to say when something's wrong, what's wrong. I'm a part of the National Association of Black Journalists, and they have been on the forefront. Our current president has been on the forefront and has tweeted to companies that do not have enough diversity. We have called people out at our career fair and journalism fair, and I'll give you an example. So CBS Sports is one of the companies that they said, hey, where is the representation? We matter. We're here. And CBS Sports stepped up. They came to our career fair, and they actually ended up hiring journalists of color who now serve as sideline reporters, and did this past football and current basketball season as sideline reporters. So I think that's where the power is. But again, it's hard to make the top change when they don't have diverse voices up there, because you need someone to voice their opinion for you, to root for you, to push for you. And it's a lot harder to do that with a person that has no experience with someone like you. So I think that's why we continue to see, unfortunately, the disproportionate numbers of journalists of color, especially when you're looking at outside of basketball and football coverage. We want to make sure that all sports have diversity in the locker room, press row, in the media room, and much more, because I think a diverse sports voice is important, especially to our viewers, our listeners, and our audience overall. Because when you write something, when you report something, you're not only taking those facts, you're taking your background and your experience in that as well. And I think we have something unique to offer, and that's why I think our voices will always be needed.
So, at heart, you are a journalist. I wanted to ask you how difficult is it to balance pure journalism with the and you just mentioned it with this new social media age where news is being reported by the second on Twitter, whether it's accurate or not. How do you kind of balance that, getting it first, getting it right versus putting it out there first?
Yeah, that's another great question. So, I mean, now because of social media, more people are trying to just get it out there first. And I think we saw the unfortunate things that can happen with the tragic loss of Kobe Bean Bryant. Remember when the Kobe news first broke, there was multiple news outlets that unfortunately broke it wrong. First, it was just Kobe. They didn't know about his daughter, Gigi, that we also lost. And then there was multiple conflicting reports about how many other people were in the helicopter crash as well. And I think they completely forgot the implications for the families at that point. But so many journalist organizations had just wanted to get the news out, and they did not care about our journalism principles. And if you're a journalist, you know we have ethics and values and principles that we are supposed to be upheld to. That is why you go to school for journalism. And I think now, again, because of social media, we live in an age where we're not caring as much to get things right. We're just caring about getting it first, and then, we'll just go back and edit and fix that because you can do that on a website or you can do that in a tweet. And it's sad. I think the old school journalistic principles are starting to leave us, and we're left in this rough place where, as you said, I think many journalism organizations are asking, do we take our time to get the story right or get it first and get that attention? And so I think if you are a true journalist, you're never going to sway or leave your values that you agree to uphold. And I think that's what makes a journalist different than just a regular blogger or someone on social media who's putting news out.
Yeah, I mean anybody, and the one part, and again, as a 30+ year Laker fan, that was that was as rough as it gets. They killed Rick Fox. Remember, they had Rick Fox in the grave. So
Yeah.
those reports
Yep.
came out as well. So
And think about how detrimental that is. That's crazy.
Yeah,
and it's sad.
Yeah.
It's so sad that happened.
Yeah, that the fact that it was like, listen, I trust TMZ. TMZ is about 98% accurate. Like, so when I see something TMZ, I'm pretty sure that it's accurate. They are the one get it first and get it right organization out there. But that had to be rough to see that if you're Vanessa Bryant, for that to be your first, contact, not contact, but seeing it first off of social media. I mean, I can't, I can only imagine, but that's the world we live in. Everything is connected towards, towards social media. Now you wear a lot of hats. You're a host, you are a reporter, journalist, sideline. Which one? How do you balance? How do you balance your career in terms of how many hats you wear, and throughout the course of the year, and the traveling? What do you do to stay sharp at all those particular positions?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So, I think time management is a skill that I'm still learning, but it's something that you have to learn, and it's different for everyone, and you have to know what you can balance. I am a person that's luckily able to balance a lot of different things and still give 100% to each thing, but that's not for everybody. But I would also say, because I want to grow and because I want to be flexible and because I don't want to be put into a box, I love doing a variety of things. So most of the times I am that person that does not go out much because I just don't have that free time. Most of my time is spent studying for the next thing. My day always looks like I'm covering this event, I'm covering that event. I'm recording a radio show. I'm recording a podcast. I'm a guest on a radio show. I'm a guest on a podcast. I'm preparing for TV hits. I'm constantly traveling, racking up airline miles and hotel points. And so my day is never the same. And then I also teach a college course. I also have a student that I mentor, and I'm his capstone advisor at Georgetown. And because I committed to all these things, I have to make time for all these things. So I really as much try to plan out ahead as I can, but this is sports. Things happen. I sometimes get stuff last minute, but I feel like if you're always well prepared, nothing will ever be a surprise, and you'll always be ready. Because I always say, you have to remember, if you really want this, when opportunity knocks, you're going to be ready and you're going to kill that opportunity. And that's how I kind of look at everything. And I think, again, I work with great people. They understand my situation and when I come from, but they also expect me to produce and do it at my best. And so luckily I've been able to balance it and continue to grow. But freelancing, again, it's not for everyone. It's a lot. Some people need that balance, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I like it because I think that means every day is a thrill for me, and I'm able to do a variety of different things. And I just am able to continue to build my portfolio, which has truly been a joy in itself.
Yeah, I mean, you are absolutely everywhere. Wow, you're teaching a college course. See that that one kind of surprised me that you're teaching. You know, you're under 30. You're teaching a college course.
Yeah,
How is that?
I am.
How is that? How do you students?
Yeah. Oh my God. I love it. I love it. It's so funny because I say the same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 27 and I have college students. But I think that just shows you never know where your life is going to go. Like, I think I've always thought about myself as a teacher. I just didn't see it right now, but the opportunity came and it was presented to me. And I took it and I'm enjoying it. And I've already been asked to come back now for the summer, spring, and next fall semester. So I guess I'm doing something right. But it's fun. I'm teaching introduction to podcasting and radio. And when you're teaching, there's nothing like it because, as much as I learn, there's nothing like giving it back to students and seeing the gleam in their eye. You see in their eyes, again, why you first joined journalism and why you first started. And I think it's a great refresher. And again, I don't think there's anything better than giving back. And I feel like me giving back is me teaching this course. And I think it's going to open many more doors where, I think there's big news coming. I think I started with this one college and, it might expand. But it's great. I spent my night last night grading and nothing wrong with that. But it's really new. I learned something from them, as much as I think they learned from me.
Yeah, I've been in education for 18 years now. I like that. So I know how difficult it is. I I teach. I don't lead teach. I'm not leading the classroom, but supporting students. So probably one of the toughest jobs, one of the toughest and most rewarding jobs at the same time in the world. It really is. But so I definitely applaud you from that standpoint. And also we talked about earlier about getting more women into sports and journalism. That's a perfect opportunity to do that. I mean, maybe you encourage someone in your classroom wants to be the next Kelsey Nicole Nelson.
In Doral, which is basically right outside of Miami. And the best thing about my class is that pretty much all my students are minorities. And again, I talk about representation matters. So think about how powerful it is to have a group of mostly minority students with a minority professor in journalism. You do not usually get that everywhere.
No.
And I think that just speaks volumes. And I hope, I can be a beacon for them to connect them. And I hope they do see me as someone they can look up to and someone that they can kind of model their career around. And I want them to be better than me, right? Like, I think now student journalists, because of social media, they can start their careers so much earlier than we could. And I only want them to be the best version of themselves. But, I mean, there's never a day that goes by that, I'm not thankful for the position that I've been put in. And I think I have a responsibility to be the best that I can be for them. Because again, I talked about it earlier, but I don't want this to be just me. I want to help open doors for others. And there needs to be a lot more Black female sports journalism professors, I think, throughout the collegiate ranks. Black males, too, for that matter. But I'm always for opening doors. And again, representation matters. And, in me, I see a reflection of my students. And I know that will forever speak volumes to them.
No question about it. I had a professor. This is like 20 years ago, back at Temple University, named Tina Green. She taught college and race and college athletics, and tremendous mentor, teacher. She was just I didn't even get an A in the class, so I won't forget. I got a B in the class, so I won't forget my grade, which was fine. I deserved it. I deserved it.
Yeah.
But she was phenomenal. She was talking about things with Serena Williams and Venus Williams. I mean, going way back, going when they first started, talked about the racism that they were dealing with at the time. Amazingly, Serena's still relevant
Yeah.
20 years later, which is just remarkable in itself. But
Yeah.
to your point, that impact of a quality teacher, especially a minority teacher, will if you really connect with your students, that impact will last a lifetime without question. Because this is 20 years ago, well over 20 years ago, and
Yeah.
I'll never forget her. She was just wonderful. You do.
Yeah, I mean, we come at it from a different perspective, and I think of all my professors, who were minorities, and we were able to connect on a different level because they really knew the path that I was going to have to go through, and my path was going to be different than my counterparts who were not minorities, right? And they're able to help prepare you for that because they've been through that. So I also think it's a special connection you can make with a professor that you have something in common with.
Now you do a lot of charity work, a lot of you're a big education advocate. Where does the energy and passion come from in terms of that? Obviously you have a busy schedule. You're ambitious. You have a lot going on in your career.
Yeah.
How do you even remotely find the time and energy to be involved in all those in all the extracurricular activities in terms of education and things of that nature?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. If you haven't noticed by now, I'm a very high energy person.
Yes. No. Really.
So I feel like I'm always on the go. Like for me, it feels weird to not be doing anything. But I didn't grow up rich. I didn't grow up fancy. My parents had to work for everything. I had to work for everything, and my parents, they worked a lot. I was first child. They moved up here from down south to make a life and make sure, I could be anything I wanted to be. But that meant usually I was always the first kid at daycare and the last one to leave. And I was one of those people that always had hands touch me. And the story that I went to my first ever professional game, basketball, football game, and any type of professional game because I had tickets given to me through the Boys and Girls Club. I was able to get my first ever tickets to a game, and getting that thrill and experience and getting to see sideline reporters and play-by-play analysts, color commentators up close, I'll never forget that. And so a lot of me, was because of others investing into me and pouring themselves into me. I had free tutoring help because my parents couldn't afford tutors and things like that. So I had a lot of people help me. So giving back is important because I think that's how you make community stronger. And again, it was done to me, and I'm one of those people, each one teach one. We stand on the shoulders of giants. To whom much is given, much is received. And I really try to live out that purpose. So, if there's ever something, and I'm one of those people that's bad to say no. I'm bad at saying no, especially if it's for community service, because I love giving back. I love seeing someone smile. I think you never know the difference you can make. And again, your community is only as strong as the people in it. And so I think we all have to work to make sure that, this country is equitable and that we have equality for all. And I think until we get to that point, everyone should be serving and giving back and making time for it. You're never too busy to give back.
No question about it. And you definitely do that within this community. Speaking of the DMV, the state of the sports world in the DMV right now, what are your thoughts on as you look upon what the Capitals are doing, what the Nationals just did? What are your thoughts on in the sports world within within the DMV? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah. So for a long time, I'll be honest, we said DC sports are cursed. We were like, none of our teams are going to bring home a championship.
No, I'll
and we had went through a drought.
Yeah, I don't think they were
through a big drought. Yeah. It was tough. It was tough. But all of a sudden, we had the Washington Dollar win a championship, our Arena Football League team. We had the Washington Mystics just win their first ever franchise championship, which I knew was going to happen once they get that missing piece, who was Elena Deladon. Yes. We saw our Capitals win the Stanley Cup. We saw our Nationals win the World Series. I'm saying something's in the water in DC. Now, we wanted to trickle to the Redskins and the Wizards, but it's going to take a lot longer for those teams to catch up. But for now, we're enjoying it. But I think it just talks about how great right now the DMV is. I've always said the DMV breeds ball players. And I'm talking about homegrown people. But now
We're still on the Ril Dil Podcast with Kelsey Nicole Nelson, as we
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host PIN. When finished, press the pound key.
To start your show now, press 1. To hear important...
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
Yes, Kelsey.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. That the Nationals run, and I watched every game from start to finish in the postseason. That run was just. I've never been, and I'm not. I'm a Nationals. I root for the team, but they're not my first team. I'm a Nat. I grew up a San Francisco Giants fan with Barry Bonds and players like that. But I've never been as excited watching a team outside my own team that I root for win a championship. It was remarkable to watch.
It was so much fun. And again, DC, we needed that. Like, Nats fans are for real in DC. And it was just so much fun, being a part of that and experiencing it. And just seeing the team come together and do what we always knew they could do. And you talked about it. I mean, if you weren't a fan of that, I don't know what you were watching. And I think the World Series was everything we wanted and more. It was suspenseful, and it came down to the last game. Who could ask for anything more than that? I think it was just phenomenal. Like I said, finally, the Nats had all the pieces, but just because you have all the pieces does not mean it's going to come together. And then I think now, even more than ever, because we found out what happened with the Astros, I think it makes it even more special that the Nationals got that win.
No question about it. I mean, beating a loaded Astros team in their home ballpark down 2-0. No, they were a special team. There was no two ways about it. I think they'll be very good this year. We'll see what happens, with them losing Rendon. But the most important pieces are the pitching, which they still have Strasburg and Scherzer, and Corbin and those guys. What sport do you like covering the most? Like what is do you like hosting? Are you a host by nature, or are you like the sideline, being the sideline reporter?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say nobody's ever been able to just give me one title, because I do it all and I love it. I love being in studio. I love doing sideline. I've even had a chance to do some color and play-by-play before. But I will say the sport that I like to cover the most, everyone has a story. The staff in football is just, I grew up with it. That's what I know. That's what I love. And, usually we're in for a good game. And again, I think it's just all the parts of a football game are just so much fun to watch. And that's why for me, accumulating in a game like the Super Bowl, which is pretty much the biggest game in the world, there's nothing like that. So it's phenomenal to watch. But basketball is closely behind me. I love the NBA arenas. I think NBA players too. You really get to get close with them because, of course, it's not as many guys on a team. Just basketball fans are also great. There's nothing like a good NBA Finals series. But football, there's something special about it, and it's kind of how I first got my start covering high school football and then high school basketball, and it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving as I get those unique opportunities to cover the game.
What was it like covering the Super Bowl this year in Miami?
Oh my gosh, the words to describe it, incredible.
So is it? I mean, obviously. Did you go? Did you go to the game?
In Atlanta, yeah.
You went to. So you were at the game. How?
Yes, you're breaking up a little bit. I'm sorry.
You still hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay. How was it covering? How was it being at the game versus the week leading up to the game?
Yeah, so Radio Row week, I'll tell you, it gets crazy. So usually I got there Sunday, but I started Radio Row on Monday. Monday is crazy, but not as crazy. So like, I'm trying to think about a way to do it. So like Monday is like when you usually go to the shopping mall, right? It's busy, but you can get around and make space. By the time you get to Friday on Radio Row, it's like you're trying to find something during Black Friday inside a shopping mall. It's crazy. There's athletes everywhere. There's celebs everywhere. There's PR people trying to grab your attention. I mean, at one point I was interviewing Jeezy. Lil Nas X is walking behind me. I see Solid and Wilcox. Like it's like everybody was like right there at one time, and like you're trying to focus on. I have Lee Steinberg people waiting for me to get him on my next set. Like, it was crazy, but it was a lot of fun. And then the game it's everything you can think of and more. I mean, the game is crazy. It's noisy. It's loud. Remember how much people are paying for those seats. People aren't sitting down. The media is up on the edge of their feet when it's a good game. We're all in shock. The game is going back and forth. You have an incredible halftime performance. So literally, it's like one of those experiences where it goes fast, but you'll never forget how that moment was, because it's crazy chaos, but it's the most fun you'll ever have.
The reason why I asked you that, there are a lot of people, even a lot of media people. Now I'm sure, there are a number of these people that have also covered and went to the game, did both. But there are a lot of people who will just do the radio stuff for a week and will go home and watch the game. Like that, I've heard a lot of people media people say that they don't like watching the game.
It's popular.
Yeah, they don't
it's popular, and I'll tell you why. Because when you're at the game, you can see the game much better on TV.
Right.
It's really hard to get, for the actual game. And then number 3, especially like the halftime show, I didn't really get to see the halftime show good until after the game, because when you're in the game, you can really just see on top, and you don't get to see all the fancy fanatics and Shakira sticking her tongue out right into the camera. You don't get to see all that. You kind of see more of the craziness. But then also, Radio Row is draining. All right, so sometimes by the time Radio Row ends, you're out of it. And then also, because the Super Bowl is so many people, some people like to go home before the game, because of course that airport the day after the Super Bowl is madness and chaos, because you have everybody trying to leave at one time. I think there are those people that just don't want any part of that, and I don't see anything wrong with that, especially if you have covered it before. It's not as big of a deal. And then, of course, also, if it's not your home team that you're usually covering, you might not be as pressed to cover that game.
So when it came time for you to cover the game, you could basically just relax. But all the hard work was done during the Radio Row that particular week. What the actual game day?
I wouldn't say so. No, I think the game is not even relaxing. Like, you're still on your ones and twos. You have to get the news out. You have to get the story out. It's loud. It's going fast. And so I think until after the game is when I could finally breathe. Because the game, I think the game days is like you're going on stage, right? The curtain's opening and it's time for you to perform. And I see Radio Row as like that kind of final dress rehearsal that you're doing. But so for me, it wasn't like that. For some, it might be. It wasn't as crazy, of course, as Radio Row. But Radio Row just gets me so excited for the game because there's so much happening. And I always tell people, like, even if you don't go to the game, even if you're a fan, like, the Super Bowl is just truly one of those experiences I highly recommend for any and everyone.
Yeah, I have to get down there. I know Miami was just, I can't imagine what Miami was like.
And it was Miami, right? Which is a perk.
Yeah,
nice weather. I mean, no jacket. Like, you couldn't ask for anything better.
So I was listening to Taylor Rook's about a year ago, talking about her breaking into the industry and wanting to be taken seriously, not just because of how she looked. Um, Obviously, there are a lot of the perception of her looks, and she's attractive and what have you. Do you find it difficult? Do you find it tough to for people to not be not be focusing on how you look versus your actual skill set? Where is that balance at? And because of the likes of, say, a Taylor Rooks, Carrie Champion, some of the other women that are prominent, that are perceived to be let's be honest with you, are perceived to be attractive. Do you find that helps you, saying that we're not just looking at her for her looks, but
Yeah.
she has a skill set?
Yeah. I think if anything, it kind of makes the road difficult. And this is just my personal experience. I mean, people can look at me and think what they want, but I think sometimes I'm pigeonholed into this box where people think, oh, she's just a pretty face. Or talk about your body. I mean, I've seen online before, like, she's probably there because or something. And I think those are the common things that they get too, which is it's unfortunate. And it's something that we commonly face. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry. I've had somebody tell me before they wouldn't let me in a locker room because I thought I would be a distraction. And that was simply based off of how I look. So when I say it's not, to me, been helpful, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I think when people see sports reporters on social media, yes, it can help you get social media likes and things like that. But when it comes to the actual business, I think sometimes people think you got there for that and not your hard work, which can be a hindrance. And if you see Taylor Rooks, she's really put the work in. Carrie Champion has really put the work in. But still there'll be people that judge me simply based off of looks. And it's just unfortunate, right? Because we've put the work in, we put the skills in, and that's why we're there, not for anything else. And it's like, we're not just saying this. We've done the work to prove it. You can Google it and see the work that's been done to get to that point. It is TV, right? So broadcasters, I'm not on the business side, but I would assume they do want somebody that people like to look at, right? When it comes to TV. But again, I think you have a harder road to prove that you're there for your skills and talent, because beauty fades, right? Talent doesn't, right? Looks fade, talent doesn't. So even if your look gets you in the door, it does not mean it's going to keep you there, all right? So I think people also have to understand that.
Yeah, I think that is an absolute. I think that what you just said is 1,000% true, and I think that will be a lesson for any up and coming young broadcasters, male or female, because there are a lot of great, good looking people out there, and eventually, yes, we're all gonna get old, whether we're attractive or not. And eventually, you're gonna have to stand. You're gonna have something to stand on as far as your skill, and there has to be substance over style at certain point like that. There's always I say this to young people all the time in terms of don't get caught up in the Instagram likes and what have you. There's always another 20-year-old, 18-year-old right around the corner as far as in terms of looks, in terms of from that standpoint. So that you're 1,000% right in terms of building your skill set, and you've built your resume and what have you. But I would think that, considering how many talented women that are out there in sports right now, that wouldn't be held against them, because it'd be like, hey, these, yes, they are, these women are attractive, but they have a skill. They do have a skill set, like you said, Carrie Champion, and a number of other women out there have a skill set. I even mentioned, like, I forgot the Stephanie Reddy. She's on NBA TV. She's good. She's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's very good. Malika Andrews, who's younger, off on ESPN. So they're
and she's young.
She's young.
Look
She's
where
younger
she
than
got,
you. I think she's younger than
Malika's
you.
very young.
Yeah, she's.
She is. I think she's like 24, 25. And then Stephanie Reddy, she really put in work. With the Charlotte Hornets before she got to NBA TV. So like, you can look at their bios and the work that they've done. I think they're all beautiful women. but they're not there because of their looks. They're there because of the work that they put in, and they grinded, they networked, and they met the right people, and then the right doors and opportunities opened.
We talked earlier about you're talking about getting a seat at the table, and this is something that I've been in the broadcasting for a long time, and thankfully we have these platforms, whether it's YouTube or Stitcher or a number of iTunes, these now with the podcasting that out, I don't have to count on a radio station for my voice to be heard. I wonder with you as a freelancer, if like let's say you don't get that seat at the table, not saying that you won't, you're well on your way. Are you cool with that from the standpoint of saying, hey, I will create my own table with so many different opportunities and so many different platforms and so many different ways that I can put my material, my content out there?
You know what? I think I've done that. A lot of my jobs I've gotten, and I get a lot of jobs now, especially hosting gigs through social media, and it's me pushing and promoting myself. Because I think as a freelancer, you don't have that backing of a company always pushing and promoting you, right? It's a lot of you doing it on your own, because essentially you're like a consultant to many different companies, right? And every day is an audition for me. I have to work to keep that freelance gig and that freelance job because I don't have that long-term contract, right? So for me, I do think now with social media, I mean, you can make your own Periscope, your own YouTube channel. I mean, you can buy a camera literally and start, to do anything. You can, make a podcast. There's so many ways for you to create your own lane and get your voice heard. So I don't see now why anybody could not start to do anything. You can make your own blog. It's easier now more than ever to reach people and get a following than it's ever been before. And so I think I've done that. I think I see so many doing that. And I think that's why now, journalism is much more different than it was before because everything's going digital. So if you have a digital presence, you'll have a space in the industry.
Couple of things before I let you go. One, and this jumped out to me today. So Tim Duncan but filled in for Greg Popovich as the interim head coach for a game or what have you last night. Tim Duncan joined the Spurs as on the coaching staff in 2019. Becky Hammond has been an assistant with the Spurs since 2014, which I found curious that they would let Tim Duncan with 1 year experience versus Becky Hammond with 6 years experience. What were your thoughts on that?
I see your viewpoint and where you're coming from, but let's be honest. I mean, Tim Duncan and what he did for that organization, they will never forget. And it's kind of like, having that. It's like if you have that when you're in high school, that best basketball player, no matter what he's doing now, when he comes back to that high school, he's still the king because of what he contributed to that school. And I think that's what we see with Tim Duncan. Everyone knows what he did for the NBA and for the game, and everyone respects Tim Duncan. And yes, I would have loved to see her get the opportunity. She should have gotten the opportunity. Don't get what I'm saying wrong. What I'm saying, I'm not surprised because of, again, what Tim has done for the NBA and that organization as a whole. And so they're trying to support him as best as he can as they see it as a way of giving back. I mean, if you look at Tim Duncan's career, not only was he a great basketball player, Tim was never in trouble. He did the community service stuff. He truly loved the city that he played in and did so much for them. So anytime Tim needs anything, and it looks like, this is going to be his new route, they're going to do whatever they can to get him to that point. And then also remember their special relationship that Tim Duncan had with Greg over the years. He probably knows Greg in a way that none of us could even imagine, because he was kind of able to break through that tougher exterior and get to a side of Greg that we don't always get to see. So when I say he probably knows secondhand knowledge and literally probably knows Greg to a T, that's probably the person that they felt the closest to being that Greg.
Another thing, you had a tweet. I gotta pick. I have a little bone to pick with this tweet that you sent out today, and I think you know where I'm going with this. Tony Romo, well deserving of a $17.5 million a year contract. Now,
Yeah.
If somebody is willing to pay for it, pay you, then you're worth it. I tell anybody in any particular industry, market value, what have you. We have a number of players who are considered to be quote unquote overpaid, but market value is market value. Only reason I was curious about that amount of money that Tony Romo got. I'm looking at Bob Costas, looking at Al Michaels, even when John Madden was in his prime in charge of doing these games. Never got those guys who are whole legends. Never got anywhere near. Even Jim Nance now today. Jim Nance does the Masters, college basketball, golf. He's everywhere for CBS. Been with CBS forever. He's only getting like $5 million a year. I just wonder what those broadcasters are thinking, watching Tony Romo, 3 or 4 years out of retirement, basically tripling their salary.
So there's a lot of conversation around this, but I think Tony Romo was able to create uniqueness in his position that we haven't seen before. And I think all the names you said, phenomenal, great, legendary broadcasters. Don't get me wrong. But Tony Romo was able to have us talk about him each and every week on social media, which is now the new numbers. There are people tuning into games more just to hear what Tony would say. And even if he annoyed you, you knew what he was saying because he was trending on social media. The way he was able to call plays before they happened, that inside knowledge he brought, CBS knew they had to do something because if they didn't, ESPN was going to rind him and grind him up and add him on. And that's the thing about it. When you're able to resonate with listeners and viewers the way he was, you're going to always have a job and make it valuable. And I'm not mad at the man getting his money.
Oh, no,
in my mind, if Tony Romo got that $17 million, if you're better than that, you'll get more than that. And I think he really set the new standard and bar.
No, listen, I'm not. I enjoy Romo's broadcast. Now, I'll give you a little. Listen, the reason why you're able to call plays before they happen because you're at the practices, and you're also an ex-quarter. He was above average ex-quarterback.
And he's a former athlete.
Yeah.
Right?
So
he was a good quarterback.
Yeah, he's a good player.
And I'm just saying, if you have broadcasters, so this is a bigger conversation. So a lot of times when I'm competing for jobs, sometimes it's against former athletes. And like you said, if you have that really inside knowledge of the game, and believe me, there's some hate there. Some journalists feel like, I went to journalism school, I did this and that. But I also do think you have a unique perspective if you played the game on the field because you're going to always see something differently than I see something. So I wouldn't take that away from Romo. And I get what you're saying. Like, there's people who put in work, who have been doing this for a long time, and Romo's getting more. But guess what? The business is not fair. Life is not fair.
No.
All right? And Tony just happened to get on the better side of that. So I agree with that. Like, believe it, I'm one of those people. But at the same time, who am I to say Tony Romo, who did so much in football and for the NFL, is not worthy of that? I brought up the play calling thing. Not saying that anybody else couldn't do it, but the way that he does it, as I'm saying, it gets us talking about him on social media. And now if you're trending for the right reason, you are very valuable to your organization. And that's what Tony Romo was able to do.
Listen, whoever his agent is, I would want them to be my agent. I give him all.
And his agent deserves all the props.
Yes, I give him all the credit in the world. My overall point was I would be curious to think what a Al Michaels, Bob Costas, Jim Nance, what they would be thinking. Jim Nance is in the booth with him. Like he's making 3 times as much as Jim Nance.
And think about that. You're sitting next to all this money. But if anything, I think when you see somebody get that much money, that's going to make me push harder and be a better version of myself. Because guess what? I want that paycheck one day too. That's how I look at it, right? Like if I'm sitting next to the $17 million a year man, I'm also getting the views he's getting. People are also watching me, which means I get to up my ante. So when it's time for my contract renewal, I get to prove why I'm also just as valuable.
One last thing before I let you go. I also saw that you had posted something about the one of your topics on the radio show about the DMV's top 5 athletes. Now I was thinking about that today. I had a hard time, and I was just thinking active. I wasn't going to the archives. I'm thinking like currently performing, people who are currently playing. I had a hard time with even coming up with 5, but I got my 5. So I want to get you.
All right.
I want to get your thoughts on my 5. So number 1, without question, is Alexander Ovechkin. I have him one.
Yes,
I
he's the
have.
king of DC.
Yep, he's the king. I have two. I have Max Scherzer two.
Okay.
Three. I have and I'm gonna mispronounce her name. Della Don, who won the championship with the Mystics.
Elena Deladon.
Yeah, Elena Della Don. She's three. She's a champion and a great player. Four. I have Bradley Beal. Four and five. I wrap it up with not Lee Strasburg. Steven Strasburg. So those are my five.
Yeah, Steven Strasburg. I think your list is good. I'll tell you, so I left Matt Scherzer off my list. I think he's phenomenal, and what he's done for DC in general is great. I have him at like my number 6. I put Steven Strasburg higher because of the World Series run and what he did.
Yeah, he was
and it's
great.
funny because Chris goes on the show with, he put Juan Soto. I think he's also phenomenal. But I'm thinking in terms of DC, and I know DC well and what sports fans are
Right.
feeling, and I put Steven Strasburg higher. Now, he got on me about John Wall, and I know John Wall's injured and hurt, but I still put John Wall on my list because fans still adore and love John Wall. And Bradley Beal, though I love him, he's a phenomenal basketball player, and he deserves respect. He unfortunately does not get that respect. Not just from the national sports media, but also from DC sports fans. You can go to a Wizards game, and it's not packed. It's not sold out. John Wall really has that superstar effect. And I think Bradley really should be number 2 when you think about it because of his phenomenal performances that he's been having. But I think we can all say Bradley Beal does not get his fair share of respect from the media or from the fans.
I can see John Wall being top 5. And he had been, before he got injured, he had been a perennial all-star, made an all-NBA team. Bradley Beal absolutely should make all-NBA
And people
team
love
this year.
John.
And people do, yeah. People love John because John gets around in the DMV. John is not one of these athletes who is sitting at home just watching TV. John is out there. You can, chances are if you're in U Street or S2Ks, you might see John. You really might. You might see John Wall.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't be surprised. John sees the people. So I'm not surprised by that at all with him being in a top 5. I didn't even think about. To be honest with you, he's been out so long. I didn't even think about John Wall.
Of course.
Because he's been hurt. But I can see that. No, I definitely can see that. Strasburg been around longer than Scherzer. Came up with the Nationals. Homegrown. I could definitely see that. And Strasburg was, just off the chart, historically great during the postseason. He was the first pitcher to go 5-0 in postseason in the history of in Major League Baseball history. So, no, it's the thing about it is we look at all these names, no football players. Think about that, none, no football players.
So I had Ryan Kerrigan. And let me tell you this.
Go ahead.
Chris got on me for that. But the Redskins are not good. The Redskins are not good.
Right.
Adrian Peterson is probably like the thing people get the happiest about. But I couldn't put AP there because we're not getting prime.
He's old.
AP,
No, he's
right?
old.
In his prime.
Right.
Still a good player. The reason I put Ryan is because, again, I'm thinking from DC sports fans. The jersey I see the most, and the person who's been the most consistent on that Redskins team, and I'm not saying he gets shiny stats. I'm not saying that at all. But when we say top 5, Ryan has a fan base like none other here in D.C. And again, he's been a consistent player for the Washington Redskins organization. And D.C. sports fans show him that.
I did. I'm not gonna lie to you. I did think about him. I did. I
had to put a Redskin in
because
I had to.
see.
We're a football town.
You have not. So you haven't been rooting for the team. I'm a little older than you. You haven't been rooting for them as long as I have. So I've dealt with. Now, I have seen a couple championships. I have. Back in, I saw Doug Williams and Mark Rippon, but I've seen a lot. You've seen all the pain. I've seen some, we both seen some dark times. So I couldn't put I just couldn't put a Redskin on there. But he definitely would have been a player, without question. If I were to put a Redskin on there, he would have been a player.
I just couldn't say, because DC is a football town.
Absolutely.
Believe me.
No question.
I could have left the Redskins player off the list, but I would be doing a disservice to DC because I don't care. The Caps are great. The Nationals are great. But if you've been born and bred here, I've been to Washington Redskins style funerals. I've been to Washington Redskins style weddings.
Yes.
We breed the Washington Redskins, all right? So that's why I had to put a Redskins player on there. And when I thought about the current roster, Kerrigan is the only one I thought that I could really put on that list with a certainty. Because, again, he's probably been the most consistent and probably been one of the only ones that sports fans really haven't got on. We saw the love-hate relationship that fans had with Josh Norman when he was here in Washington. And I think that player, had he not had his knee hurt and had his career continued here, that player would have been RG3 had his career stayed in Washington and that injury not hurt him. Because, I mean, I haven't seen a love for any Redskin like I did RG3 in a very long time.
The RG3 story would be another podcast. That RG3, yeah, he should have been that player, but you know.
I'm just saying, think about it.
Yeah,
like, had his career went as we thought, RG3 would have been on that list, and it would not have been Ryan Kerrigan.
No question. I mean, RG3 probably would have been. I would say he probably would have been number one. I mean, if his career would have went the way, it started out in his rookie season, he would have been unanimous, even unquestioned number one. Maybe not unquestioned, but at worst number two. But based on your logic as far as and not your logic, it's fact. Based on it being a football town, he probably would have been number one, despite the fact that Ovechkin, has a cup and is an all-time great in his own right. Well, Kelsey, again, thank you for joining this program. I appreciate the time. Certainly, I will be following your career and what you do, and definitely you have welcome anytime to come on the program. You want to talk about if the Terrapins win a championship, you can call in. And definitely call in and talk about and talk about
when we win a championship.
When you win, okay. So you're about to jinx it. You're about to jinx it. But I definitely appreciate your time and look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me on. Have a great night.
You too.
Thanks.
That was Kelsey Nicole Nelson. A lot of good stuff out of her as far as the world of sports media, and she's even doing some politics now in terms of covering Super Tuesday. She was out there in Virginia, and that was a wild scene out there as we gear towards election 2020. Couple things we're going to do. It's a couple things I'm going to say for Thursday thoughts, because there was a few things that went on this week that I would love to talk about, but I'm going to save them for Thursday thoughts. So you got to stay tuned tomorrow. You just got to wait, less than 24 hours. That's all. That's it. As always, this is the Ril Dil Podcast with Cyril Gerald-Quinn. Thank you for joining me. I'm out.